The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a soft whisper. Ambassador Kang Minho walked through them with calm, measured steps. His black diplomatic uniform was perfectly pressed. Behind him followed Dr. Park Ji-won, carrying a data tablet filled with charts and numbers. Both humans moved with the quiet confidence that had made their species famous throughout the galaxy. The chamber was enormous. Its walls stretched up so high that clouds formed near the ceiling. Hundreds of alien beings sat in curved rows, their forms as different as the stars themselves. Some glowed with inner light. Others looked like living metal. A few seemed to be made of pure energy contained in transparent shells. All of them were watching the two humans. Minho had been preparing for this day for 3 years. Today, humanity would finally ask to become full members of the Galactic Council. For 30 years, humans had been observers only. They could watch. They could speak when asked. But they could not vote on the laws that governed the galaxy. That was about to change. The elder Velthar sat at the center of the great chamber. The ancient being looked like a mountain of living crystal. Light moved through its body in slow, thoughtful patterns. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The session begins," Velthar announced. "Today we hear from the species called human. They request elevation from observer status to full membership in this council." Minho stepped forward. He placed his hand over his heart and bowed slightly. It was the traditional greeting that showed respect to all council species at once. "Honored elder, respected councilors," Minho began. "I am Ambassador Kang Minho, speaking for all humanity. We come before you today not as conquerors or traitors, but as neighbors. We ask to join this council as equals." A ripple of soft sounds moved through the chamber. Some aliens clicked their approval. Others hummed in harmonious tones. The humans had always been polite. They had always shown proper respect. Dr. Park stepped forward and activated her tablet. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed images of human colonies scattered across 17 star systems. "For 30 years, Park began, humanity has contributed to galactic peace. We have served as mediators in the border wars between the Altari and the Nexus Collective. We helped design the refugee camps when the Corvan sun went nova. We built the hospital stations that now serve 6 different species." The display changed to show human doctors working alongside alien patients. Tall, thin Altari with their bird-like heads, the rocky Corvan with their stone-like skin, even the mysterious Nexus beings that looked like living shadows. Counselor Ixathera of the Hegemony leaned forward. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Humans have indeed been helpful," she said in her singing voice. "But membership in this council requires more than helpfulness. It requires strength, the ability to defend not just yourselves, but all peaceful species in this galaxy." Minho nodded slowly. He had expected this question. Every species that joined the council had to prove they could contribute to galactic defense. "Humanity understands this responsibility," Minho replied. "Our fleet may be small, but our ships are well designed. We have 17 colony worlds, each protected by defense stations. We have never started a war, but we have never lost one either." This was not entirely true, and everyone in the chamber knew it. Humanity had never fought a war in space. They had stopped several small conflicts through negotiation and clever diplomacy, but they had never actually been tested in real combat against a galactic-level threat. Counselor Kelvis of the Ferenian Republic spoke next. His crystalline form sparkled as he moved. "Your species shows great promise in peaceful pursuits," he said. "Your medical knowledge has saved millions of lives. Your engineering has improved space travel for everyone. But we must ask the difficult question. What happens when diplomacy fails?" Dr. Park looked at her tablet and then at Minho. They had prepared for this question too. "When diplomacy fails," Minho said carefully, "humanity believes in proportional response. We defend ourselves and our allies with exactly the force needed. No more, no less. We believe that every problem has a solution that does not require unnecessary death." The chamber fell quiet. This answer satisfied many of the council members. Humans were known for this kind of thinking. They always looked for the middle path, the solution that hurt the fewest people. Elder Velthar's crystal form brightened slightly. "Your species has shown wisdom in your 30 years among us," the ancient being said. "You have proven that intelligence and compassion can solve most conflicts. But tell us, Ambassador Minho, what drives humanity? What is the core of your species' nature?" Minho considered the question. He thought of Earth with its blue oceans and green continents. He thought of the human colonies where children played in parks while their parents worked to build better lives. He thought of the hospitals and schools and research stations that humans had built throughout the galaxy. Elder Veltar, Minho said, humanity is driven by one simple desire. We want to protect the things we love. Our families, our friends, our homes. And now after 30 years of working alongside the species of this council, we love this galactic community too. We want to protect it. Dr. Park nodded and added, humans believe that peace is not just the absence of war. Peace is the presence of justice. When good people can live safe lives, when children can grow up without fear, when different species can work together toward common goals, that is the peace we want to help build. Several alien counselors made approving sounds. The Altari clicked their beaks in rhythm. The Corvin hummed deep, resonant notes. Even the usually silent Nexus beings flickered their forms in what might have been agreement, but not everyone was convinced. Counselor Thexara of the militant caste stood up. His armor gleamed under the chamber's lights. Pretty words, he said in his harsh voice. But words do not stop plasma cannons. Words do not protect colonies from raiders. What will humanity do when someone decides that your peaceful ways make you easy targets? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Minho felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes watching him. This was the moment that would decide everything. How he answered this question would determine whether humanity joined the council as full members, or remained observers for another generation. Counselor Thexara, Minho said slowly, humanity hopes that day never comes. We will work every day to make sure it never comes. But if someone does threaten the innocent people we have sworn to protect, he paused and looked around the chamber. Then they will discover that peaceful people can be very, very dangerous when they need to be. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the soft background hum of the station's system seemed to fade away. Something in Minho's voice, something in the way he said those last words made even the most warlike species pay attention. Dr. Park felt a small chill run down her spine. She had known Minho for 10 years. She had never heard him speak like that before. For just a moment, the polite diplomat had disappeared. Something else had looked out through his eyes. Something ancient and patient and utterly determined. Then the moment passed. Minho smiled his gentle diplomatic smile again. But as I said, honored counselors, we hope such measures will never be necessary. Elder Velthar's crystal form pulsed with slow, thoughtful light. We will consider your request, humans. The council will debate and vote within the week. But as the session ended and the alien counselors began to file out of the chamber, none of them noticed the priority communication signal that was just beginning to flash on the emergency channels. Far across the galaxy, on the peaceful human colony world of New Sol, the first enemy ships were dropping out of hyperspace. Ambassador Minho was halfway through explaining human trade agreements when the chamber's emergency system activated. Red lights began flashing along the walls. A deep tone echoed through the massive space, the kind of sound that made every species stop talking and pay attention. Dr. Park looked up from her data tablet with surprise. In 30 years of council sessions, the emergency communication system had only been used twice. Both times, entire star systems had been in danger. Elder Velthar's crystal form flickered with confusion. What emergency could warrant interrupting a formal membership hearing? The ancient being asked. The answer came in the form of a holographic projection that materialized in the center of the chamber. The face that appeared was weathered and grim. General Li Hyunwoo of Earth Defense Command looked like a man who had not slept in days. Ambassador Kang, the general said without ceremony, I apologize for the interruption, but this cannot wait. Minho stepped forward, his diplomatic composure intact but concern visible in his eyes. General Li, what has happened? Sir, at EO 347 Galactic Standard Time, the colony world of New Sol came under attack. The general's voice was steady, professional, but Park could hear something else underneath. Something cold and angry. Enemy forces identified as Draknari Imperial Fleet launched a surprise assault on civilian population centers. The chamber erupted in sounds of shock and confusion. The Draknari Empire was known throughout the galaxy as aggressive, but they usually kept their conflicts small. Border raids, mining disputes, that sort of thing. They had never launched a major attack on any council-protected world. Counselor Ixithera of the Hegemony stood up, her four eyes wide with disbelief. "General, surely you mean military targets. The Draknari may be warlike, but they follow the Galactic War Conventions. They do not target civilians." General Lee's expression grew darker. "Counselor, I wish that were true. The first wave of attacks targeted schools, hospitals, and residential districts. They used plasma bombardment against defenseless cities." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely controlled. "Current casualty estimates stand at 2.3 million dead." The silence that followed was deafening. Park felt the blood drain from her face. 2 million people, gone, just like that. Ambassador Minho closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, something had changed. The gentle diplomat was still there, but underneath, Park could see something else stirring. Something she had never seen in her colleague before. "General," Minho said quietly, "what is Earth's response?" "Sir, the Defense Council convened an emergency session 1 hour ago. The vote was unanimous." General Lee looked directly into the camera, and every being in the council chamber could see the determination in his eyes. "We are activating the Sol Defense Protocol. Full military mobilization across all human worlds. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have." Councillor Kelvis of the Ferenian Republic leaned forward. His crystalline form was pulsing with nervous energy. "Surely, General, there must be room for negotiation. Perhaps reparations, a formal apology?" "No." The word came from Dr. Park, and it surprised everyone in the chamber, including herself. She stood up slowly, her tablet forgotten in her hands. "They killed children, families, people who never held a weapon in their lives." General Lee nodded grimly. "Dr. Park is correct. The time for negotiation ended when they chose to murder civilians. The fleet is already moving to intercept." Elder Velthar's crystal form brightened with what might have been concern. "General Lee, humans have always chosen the path of peace. Your species has mediated conflicts for 3 decades. Surely you can find a solution that does not require—" "With respect, Elder," General Lee interrupted, and his voice carried an edge that made even the ancient crystal being pause. "They targeted kindergartens. They bombed playgrounds full of children. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. There will be justice." The chamber fell silent again. The alien counselors looked at each other with growing unease. This was not the humanity they knew. For 30 years, humans had been the voices of reason, the ones who found peaceful solutions to every problem. Ambassador Minho stepped closer to the holographic projection. "General, what are our capabilities?" "Sir, we have 4 battle groups moving toward Draknari space. The Inchin battle group is in the lead, commanded by Admiral Cho Jinsu. ETA to first contact is 18 hours. The general paused, consulting something off-screen. "Sir, there's something else. Recruitment stations across all human worlds are reporting unprecedented volunteer numbers. People are lining up to join hunter squadrons." "Hunter squadrons?" Councillor Thexara of the militant caste asked. He was the only one in the chamber who looked interested rather than worried. "Special Forces units," General Lee explained. "Fast ships, small crews designed for one purpose." He looked directly at the alien counselors. "Making the enemy pay for what they did." Dr. Park found herself studying the tactical data streaming across her tablet. Population density of Draknari worlds, fleet compositions, supply lines. She realized with a start that she was calculating the most efficient ways to hurt them back. The peaceful scientist was thinking like a strategist, and it felt natural. "General," she said, "do we have intelligence on their command structure?" "Yes, Doctor. We've identified the flagship of the fleet that attacked New Sol, the Draknari dreadnought Eternal Conquest commanded by war leader Krexthul. Our intelligence suggests he gave the order to target civilians." Something cold settled in Park's chest. "Good," she said simply. The word hung in the air like a promise of violence. Several alien counselors shifted uncomfortably. This was not the Dr. Park they knew. The gentle scientist who had spent years developing new medical treatments for different species. Ambassador Minho received another transmission on his personal communicator. He listened for a moment, then looked up at the chamber. "The first human ships have made contact with Draknari scouts in the Outer Rim. Captain O. Minji of the destroyer Sol's Vengeance is requesting permission to engage." General Lee nodded curtly. "Permission granted. Rules of engagement are simple. Any Draknari military vessel is a legitimate target. Take prisoners when possible, but protecting human lives comes first." Elder Velthar pulsed with agitation. But surely you must consider proportional response. The laws of civilized warfare. The laws of civilized warfare, Dr. Park interrupted, her voice steady but cold, were broken when they decided to murder children in their beds. Everything that happens next is their choice. They chose this war. They chose to target innocents. Now they get to live with the consequences. The transmission from Captain O came through clearly. Admiral, we have Draknari scouts in sight. 3 light cruisers moving in standard patrol formation. They're running, sir. As soon as they saw us, they turned and fled. General Lee smiled for the first time since the transmission began. It was not a pleasant smile. Let them run, Captain. Let them warn their fleet. Let them know that humanity is coming. Ambassador Minho looked around the chamber at the faces of the alien counselors. Some looked worried. Others appeared frightened. A few seemed curious about what they were seeing. Honored counselors, Minho said formally, I believe our membership hearing will need to be postponed. We have some urgent business to attend to. As the transmission ended and the holographic projection faded, the chamber remained silent. The alien representatives sat in their seats processing what they had just witnessed. For 30 years they had seen humanity as gentle mediators and helpful neighbors. In the space of 15 minutes they had seen something else entirely. They had seen what humans became when someone threatened their families. Dr. Park gathered her data tablet and prepared to leave with Ambassador Minho. As they walked toward the chamber doors, she could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching them. Doctor, Elder Velthar called out, where are you going? Park turned back to face the ancient being. Her expression was calm, almost serene, but her eyes held a coldness that made even the crystal elder recoil slightly. Home, she said simply, to help plan the war. The massive chamber doors closed behind the 2 humans with a soft whisper, leaving the council to contemplate what they had just learned about their peaceful neighbors. In the silence that followed, Counselor Thexara of the militant caste spoke quietly. I think, he said, we may have underestimated the humans. Elder Velthar's crystal form flickered with an emotion that might have been fear. Indeed, the question is, what have we invited into our council? Outside the chamber, Ambassador Minho and Dr. Park walked quickly toward their shuttle. Neither spoke until they were alone in the corridor. Minho, Park said quietly, I felt something back there. When the general was talking about the children, I wanted to hurt them. Really hurt them. Minho nodded slowly. I felt it too. Something waking up inside me. Something I didn't know was there. They reached their shuttle, and as the engines powered up for the journey back to Earth, both humans stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Draknari were about to learn something new about the species they had attacked. They were about to learn what happened when you made humanity angry. Back on Earth, something was happening to humanity. It started small, like a whisper spreading from person to person. Word of the attack on New Sol reached every human colony within 6 hours. And with that word came a change that no one had expected. Captain Kim Sung-ho had been flying cargo ships between Earth and the outer colonies for 12 years. He was a quiet man who enjoyed the peaceful routine of moving supplies from world to world. His biggest worry used to be whether his coffee maker would work properly during long flights. That was before he saw the images from New Sol. Seung-ho sat in his small apartment on Luna Station, staring at the news reports on his wall screen. Children's toys scattered in bomb craters. A school playground turned into twisted metal and ash. Families who had been having breakfast when the plasma bombs fell. Something cold and sharp grew in his chest as he watched. Something that felt ancient and patient and absolutely certain about what needed to be done. He turned off the screen and walked to his communication terminal. His fingers moved without hesitation as he typed a message to Earth Defense Command. Request immediate transfer to combat duties. Hunter Squadron preferred. Will accept any assignment that puts me in range of Draknari ships. Seung-ho was not alone. Across 17 human worlds, similar messages were flooding military recruitment centers. Farmers left their fields. Teachers left their classrooms. Even doctors and nurses were requesting combat assignments. Dr. Park Ji-won sat in her office aboard the council station, but her mind was not on her usual research. Instead, she found herself studying Draknari military tactics, fleet formations, and weapon systems. The woman who had spent her career healing was now calculating the most efficient ways to disable enemy ships. She pulled up the specifications for Draknari battlecruisers and began making notes. Their shields were strong but had a specific frequency weakness. Their engines ran hot and needed constant cooling. Their command centers were located in the forward section, making them vulnerable to focused fire. Park paused and stared at her notes. When had she learned to think like this? When had targeting enemy weaknesses become as natural as breathing? The answer came to her slowly. She had always known these things. Every human had. They just never needed to use that knowledge before. On Earth, the recruitment centers were overwhelmed. Lines of volunteers stretched for blocks. But these were not the eager young people who usually joined military services. These were parents, grandparents, teachers, and artists. People who had never thought about violence were now demanding the chance to fight. Lieutenant Colonel Yang Soo-young stood at the recruitment center in Seoul, watching the crowds with amazement. She had been in charge of this facility for 5 years. On a busy day, she might process 20 new recruits. Today, she had processed over 3,000 and more kept coming. Colonel, Sergeant Major Huang approached her with a data pad. We have a problem. We've got volunteers from every profession you can imagine. Scientists, engineers, even musicians. They all want the same thing, which is Hunter Squadron assignment. They want to be on the ships that find Draknari targets. Yang looked at the data pad. Among the names were people she recognized. Dr. Kim Min-jae, the pediatric surgeon who had saved her daughter's life 3 years ago. Professor Lee Da-yoon, who taught philosophy at the university. Even Mrs. Choi Yoon-hee, the elderly woman who ran the flower shop near Yang's home. Colonel, Sergeant Major Huang continued. What do we tell them? Most of these people have never fired a weapon in their lives. Yang watched the crowds for a moment. She saw determination in their faces. Not anger exactly. Something deeper. Something that looked like purpose. We train them, she said simply. All of them. Halfway across the galaxy, the first human ships were already engaging Draknari scouts. Captain Oh-minji stood on the bridge of the destroyer Soul's Vengeance, watching the tactical display with calm focus. Captain, her tactical officer Lieutenant Jang Tae-hyun reported, we have 3 Draknari light cruisers trying to escape to hyperspace. Should we pursue? No, Minji said quietly. Let one of them go. Lieutenant Jang looked confused. Captain? They need to report back to their fleet, Minji explained. They need to tell their commanders what they saw here. And what did they see, Captain? Minji smiled. But it was not the warm smile she used to give to passengers on her old civilian transport. This smile was sharp and cold and promised terrible things. They saw that humanity is no longer asking for peace, she said. We're coming to take it. The Soul's Vengeance moved toward the remaining Draknari ships with predatory grace. These were the same humans who had spent decades mediating conflicts and building hospitals. But now they moved through space like apex predators who had finally identified their prey. Back on the council station, Ambassador Minho received reports from the first engagements. The news was better than anyone had dared hope. Human ships were not just winning. They were completely overwhelming Draknari forces. But the reports also contained something else. Something that made Minho pause and read more. Carefully, Captain O's tactical report mentioned selective targeting of enemy life, support systems to maximize prisoner capture. Commander Park's squadron had used psychological warfare protocols to induce mass surrender. Admiral Cho had implemented coordinated fleet maneuvers designed to minimize enemy casualties while ensuring complete tactical superiority. These were not the tactics of an angry mob seeking revenge. These were the careful, calculated moves of hunters who knew exactly what they were doing. Dr. Park looked up from her tactical analysis as Minho entered her temporary office. Ambassador, I've been studying the enemy fleet compositions. I think I understand their strategy now. Tell me, they expected us to respond emotionally, rush in, make mistakes, fight angry. Instead, we're fighting smart. She turned her screen toward him. Look at these engagement reports. Our captains are not trying to destroy enemy ships. They're trying to capture them intact. Why? Because angry people destroy things. Hunters collect trophies. Minho sat down heavily. The implications of what Park was saying began to sink in. You're saying this isn't revenge? No, Park said calmly. This is something much more dangerous. This is humanity hunting. On Earth, the transformation was becoming more visible by the hour. News reports showed factories that had been producing consumer goods now switching to military equipment. Research laboratories that had been developing new medicines were now creating better weapons. Even children in schools were learning about Draknari weaknesses alongside their regular lessons. But it was not chaos. It was not panic. It was organization on a scale that the galaxy had never seen before. Millions of humans working together with a single focus. Protect the innocent. Stop the threat. Make sure this never happened again. Captain Kim Sung-ho completed his transfer to Hunter Squadron Delta within 18 hours of applying. He found himself aboard the fast attack ship Busan's Fury, crewed by people like himself. Former civilians who had discovered something inside themselves that they never knew existed. Sung-ho, his new squadron leader, Commander Ryu Jinhwan, called him over. "You flew cargo ships, right? You know Draknari trade routes?" "Yes, sir. I've been through their space dozens of times." "Good. We need someone who knows where they hide their supply bases." Seung-ho looked at the star charts on the command table. Red markers showed known Draknari military positions. But his mind was already seeing something else. The hidden stations where their ships refueled. The asteroid bases where they stored their weapons. The secret routes they used when they did not want to be seen. "Commander," he said quietly, "I know where all of them are." For 12 years, Seung-ho had been a peaceful cargo pilot. He had traded with the Draknari, shared meals with their crews, even helped rescue their ships when they had engine trouble. He had been their friend. Now he was their worst nightmare, someone who knew all their secrets and was willing to use them. The transformation was complete. Across 17 worlds, 60 billion humans had awakened to something they had forgotten they possessed. Not rage, not hatred, something far more dangerous. The absolute certainty that they would do whatever it took to protect their own. Dr. Park stood at the observation deck of the council station, looking out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, human ships were hunting, not for glory or conquest or revenge. They were hunting because someone had made the mistake of killing human children. And now that someone was going to learn what happened when you awakened humanity's killer instinct, the gentle species that had mediated conflicts for 30 years was gone. In its place was something that the galaxy had never seen before, humanity at war. Not for territory or resources or ideology. Humanity at war to protect the things they loved. And that, Park realized with a cold certainty, made them more dangerous than any army in galactic history. The first real battle between human and Draknari forces began at 1427 Galactic Standard Time and ended at 1431. 4 minutes and 37 seconds of combat that changed how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. Captain O. Minji stood on the bridge of Sol's Vengeance, watching the tactical display as 6 Draknari cruisers moved into standard attack formation. The enemy ships were larger than her destroyer, with heavier armor and more powerful weapons. By all military logic, the smart move would be to call for backup and wait for reinforcements. Instead, O ordered her ship to accelerate directly toward the enemy fleet. "Captain," Lieutenant Jang Taehyun said from his position at the weapons console, "they're charging their main guns. If we stay on this course, they'll have us in range in 2 minutes." "Good," O replied calmly. "Make sure all weapon systems are ready. Target their engines first, not their weapons." "Engines, Captain? Shouldn't we neutralize their ability to fight back?" O turned to look at her tactical officer. Jang had served with her for 3 years on civilian transports. He was a good man, careful and thoughtful, but he was thinking like someone who wanted to survive a fight. O was thinking like someone who wanted to win a war. "Lieutenant, we don't want to destroy these ships," she explained patiently. "We want to capture them, and we want survivors to carry word back to their fleet about what happens when you attack human civilians." The Sol's Vengeance rushed toward the Draknari formation with reckless speed. To the enemy commanders, it looked like a suicide run. 1 small human ship charging 6 larger vessels. They prepared to quickly destroy the foolish attackers and continue their patrol. They had no idea what they were about to face. Back on the council station, alien representatives watched the battle through long-range sensors. The chamber was nearly silent as the tactical display showed the tiny human ship racing toward certain destruction. Elder Velthar's crystal form flickered with concern. "Surely the human captain realizes she is outnumbered 6-1. "She knows," Dr. Park replied quietly. She was studying the sensor readings with the same calm focus she once used to examine microscopic organisms. "She's not trying to survive this battle. She's trying to win it. Counselor Ixathera leaned forward, her 4 eyes wide with disbelief. How can one ship defeat 6? It is mathematically impossible. Dr. Park looked up from her datapad. You're thinking about this wrong, Counselor. You're calculating firepower and armor thickness. Captain O is calculating fear and confusion. On her tactical display, the Soul's Vengeance suddenly changed course. Instead of charging straight at the center of the Draknari formation, the ship dove below the enemy fleet and came up behind their lead cruiser. The movement was so quick and unexpected that the Draknari gunners couldn't track it. O's first shots were surgical. Precise energy beams that disabled the enemy ship's engines without damaging the crew quarters. The Draknari cruiser found itself dead in space, helpless but still alive. Captain, Zhang reported, the enemy fleet is trying to reposition. They weren't expecting us to move like that. Of course not, O said. They've been studying our patrol patterns for 30 years. Careful, defensive, predictable. They think they know how humans fight. The Soul's Vengeance spun around the disabled cruiser, using it as cover while targeting the engines of the second Draknari ship. The enemy fleet tried to spread out, but O anticipated their moves. Her ship danced between their formations like a predator playing with prey. Within 3 minutes, 4 Draknari cruisers were floating helpless in space. Their crews were alive, but their ships could not move or fight. The remaining 2 cruisers tried to retreat, but O had positioned herself to block their escape route. This is Captain O Minji of the human destroyer Soul's Vengeance. She broadcast on all frequencies. Draknari vessels, you have 60 seconds to surrender. Any ship that tries to run will be destroyed. Any ship that tries to fight will be disabled and boarded. The alien counselors watched in stunned silence as both remaining Draknari ships immediately began transmitting surrender signals. How? Counselor Kelvis whispered. How did one ship defeat 6 in 4 minutes? Dr. Park was examining the tactical data with growing amazement. Because Captain O wasn't fighting 6 ships, she said slowly. She was hunting them. There's a difference. The difference became clear as more reports came in from across the battle zone. Human ships were not engaging in traditional fleet actions. Instead, they moved in coordinated hunting packs, targeting specific enemy weaknesses and using psychological warfare to break enemy morale. Commander Park Ji-hoon's squadron had surrounded a Draknari supply convoy without firing a single shot. They simply appeared around the enemy ships and waited. When the Draknari tried to run, they found escape routes blocked. When they tried to fight, they discovered that human ships could predict their moves before they made them. This is Commander Park of the human fleet. His transmission reached the convoy. You are carrying supplies that will be used to kill innocent people. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to Galactic law. Resist and we will take your ships anyway, but some of you might not survive the experience. The entire convoy surrendered within minutes. Admiral Cho Jin-soo, commanding the main human battle group, received reports from across the front lines. Every engagement was ending the same way. Complete human victory with minimal casualties on both sides. But the reports also contained something else. Something that made even the experienced admiral pause. Sir, his communications officer Lieutenant Nam Yujin reported, we're receiving surrender requests from Draknari ships that haven't even seen our forces yet. Word is spreading through their fleet about what happened to the ships we've already captured. What are they saying? That the humans fight like devils, sir. That we can predict their moves before they make them. That resistance is useless. Admiral Cho nodded slowly. Fear was a weapon, and humans were learning to use it with surgical precision. Back on the council station, the alien representatives struggled to understand what they were witnessing. For 30 years, humans had been predictable. They followed standard military doctrine, established rules of engagement, and always chose the path that caused the least harm. Now they were watching humanity wage war in a way that no galactic power had ever seen. Not with overwhelming force or advanced technology, but with a combination of tactical brilliance and psychological warfare that left enemies helpless and terrified. Ambassador Minho, Elder Veltar said quietly, your species is fighting with unusual methods. Minho was receiving constant updates from the fleet commanders. Every report showed the same pattern. Human ships appearing where the enemy least expected them. Surgical strikes that disabled rather than destroyed. Prisoners taken alive and treated well, but used to spread fear through enemy ranks. Elder Velthar, Minho replied, we told you that humanity would protect what we love. We never said we would do it gently, Dr. Park looked up from her analysis of the battle data. The Draknari made a crucial mistake, she said to the assembled counselors. They studied human peacekeeping operations and assumed that was how we fought wars. But peacekeeping and warfare are completely different skills. How so? Counselor Thexara asked. He was the only alien in the chamber who looked impressed rather than worried. Peacekeeping requires restraint, negotiation, and patience, Park explained. War requires the ability to completely break your enemy's will to fight. Humans have been doing both for thousands of years. The Draknari only saw one side of our nature. Captain Kim Sung-ho's hunter squadron had just completed their first mission. They had tracked down a Draknari supply base hidden in an asteroid field, a secret location that had been used for smuggling operations for decades. Seung-ho, Commander Ryu called him over to look at the intelligence they had gathered. Your knowledge of their trade routes was perfect. We found weapons stockpiles, supply caches, even backup command centers they thought were hidden. Seung-ho looked at the data with satisfaction. For 12 years, he had been welcomed as a friend in Draknari space. They had trusted him, shared their secrets, treated him like family. That trust was now humanity's greatest weapon. Commander, he said quietly, I know the location of 17 more bases just like this one. And I know which Draknari commanders are personally responsible for ordering attacks on civilian targets. The transformation was complete. The gentle cargo pilot had become a hunter who knew his prey better than they knew themselves. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Human forces were not just winning battles. They were systematically dismantling the Draknari war machine using knowledge gained during 30 years of peaceful contact. Every trade route humans had used for commerce was now a hunting ground. Every Draknari base where humans had been welcomed was now a target. Every friendship that had been built during decades of cooperation had become intelligence that made human attacks devastatingly effective. Dr. Park stood at the observation deck of the council station, watching the stars and thinking about what humanity had become in just a few days. They were still the same people who built hospitals and mediated conflicts. But they were also something else now. They were apex predators who had spent 30 years learning everything about their prey. And now the hunt had truly begun. The gentle species that the galaxy had known was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. Not because humans had become cruel or evil, but because they had remembered what they were capable of when someone threatened their children. The Draknari had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping for generations. Something patient and intelligent and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting the innocent. Something that would not stop until every threat to human families had been permanently removed. The hunt had begun, and the prey was starting to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. As human forces continued their devastating advance through Draknari space, the council members began to search through their databases for information about humanity's true capabilities. What they found in the historical records made them question everything they thought they knew about their peaceful neighbors. Counselor Ixathara of the Hegemony was the first to access Earth's public archives. She had been looking for information about human military doctrine, expecting to find records of small conflicts and police actions. Instead, she discovered something that made her 4 eyes widen with horror. Council members, she announced to the chamber, her voice trembling with shock. I have found records of human warfare from their home planet. They have fought wars among themselves for thousands of years. Elder Velthar's crystal form flickered with concern. Surely you mean small conflicts. Border disputes, perhaps? No, Elder. Ixthara brought up a holographic display showing Earth's historical data. They call it the Second World War. 60 million humans died in 6 years. 60 million of their own species. The chamber fell completely silent. The number was so large that several alien species could not even comprehend it. Some galactic civilizations had never suffered even 1 million casualties in their entire recorded histories. Counselor Kelvas leaned forward, his crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy. That cannot be correct. How could any species survive such losses? Dr. Park looked up from her tactical displays. She had been monitoring the human fleet's progress, but now she turned to address the shocked alien counselors. We survived because we learned from it, she said calmly. Every war taught us something new about violence, about strategy, about the cost of conflict. We spent the last century making sure we never had to fight each other again. But how many wars have you fought in total? Counselor Thexara asked. He was studying the data with professional interest, being from a warrior culture himself. Dr. Park considered the question. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands, depending on how you count smaller conflicts. We have been at war with someone, somewhere on our planet, for most of our recorded history. The alien counselors exchanged worried glances. They had welcomed humanity into galactic society because they seemed peaceful and wise. Now they were learning that humans had more experience with warfare than any other known species. Ambassador Minho received another tactical update from Admiral Cho. The news was both encouraging and terrifying. Human forces had now disabled or captured over 300 Draknari ships, without losing a single vessel of their own. Ambassador, Elder Velthar said quietly, we must ask, if humans are so experienced with war, why did you present yourselves as peaceful mediators? Because we are peaceful, Minho replied. Everything we told you was true. We prefer negotiation to conflict. We would rather build hospitals than weapons. We want to protect life, not destroy it. But you are also capable of... Velthar gestured toward the tactical displays showing the systematic destruction of Draknari military power. Yes? Minho said simply. We are capable of this too. Dr. Park pulled up more historical data on her tablet. Let me show you something else, counselors. This is from a conflict called the American Civil War. 600,000 humans died in 4 years. They were fighting over whether slavery should be legal. She changed the display to show images of battles and casualty reports. And this is from a war called World War I. 20 million dead in 4 years. They fought over territory and political systems. The alien counselors stared at the data in growing horror. These numbers represented more deaths than most galactic conflicts in the past 1,000 years. You fight wars over ideas? Counselor Ixathera whispered. We used to, Dr. Park confirmed. We fought over religion, politics, territory, resources, and principles. Sometimes we fought just because our leaders told us to fight. Captain Kim Sung-ho's voice came through the communication system from his Hunter Squadron. Council Station, this is Hunter Delta. We've located another Draknari supply base. Intelligence suggests this one was used to store the weapons used in the New Soul attack. The captain's voice carried a cold satisfaction that made several alien counselors shift uncomfortably. This was not the voice of someone seeking justice. This was the voice of someone who had found his prey. What are your intentions, Captain? Ambassador Minho asked. Complete seizure of all military assets, sir. We're also downloading their computer records to identify everyone involved in planning the civilian attacks. Elder Velthar interrupted the transmission. Captain, surely you intend to offer the base personnel a chance to surrender? There was a pause before Sung-ho replied. Of course, Elder, we always offer surrender. But we also make it very clear what happens if they refuse. And what happens if they refuse. Another pause. When Sung-ho spoke again, his voice was matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing the weather. Then they discover that humans have been perfecting the art of warfare for 5,000 years, while they have been playing at being soldiers for 50. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in uncomfortable silence. Dr. Park continued her historical presentation. We fought the 100 Years' War. We fought the 30 Years' War. We fought wars that lasted for generations and wars that ended in single days. We learned every possible way that intelligent beings can hurt each other. But surely, Counselor Kelvis said desperately, you must have learned the futility of violence? We learned that violence is a tool, Dr. Park replied. Like any tool, it can be used for good or evil purposes. When someone threatens innocent people, violence becomes necessary to stop them. Admiral Cho's voice came through the communication system. Council Station, this is Admiral Cho reporting from the front lines. Draknari Fleet Command has requested a ceasefire to discuss terms. Ambassador Minho looked at the tactical displays. Human forces had been fighting for less than a week, but they had already captured or disabled 60% of the Draknari military fleet. What terms are they proposing, Admiral? Complete withdrawal from human space, war reparations, and punishment of the commanders responsible for the civilian attacks. They're also offering to surrender their entire military command structure for trial. The speed of the collapse was stunning. The Draknari Empire had been a major galactic power for centuries. Now they were begging for mercy after less than a week of fighting humans. Elder Velthar's crystal form dimmed with what might have been sadness. How is this possible? The Draknari have one of the largest fleets in the galaxy. Dr. Park looked at the tactical data with clinical interest. They have ships and weapons, but they don't understand warfare. They think war is about who has the biggest guns or the most ships. And humans think war is about what? Counselor Thexara asked. War is about breaking your enemy's will to fight, Dr. Park explained. It's about making them understand that continued resistance will only bring more pain. The Draknari are warriors. They understand battle. But they don't understand the systematic destruction of everything that makes warfare possible. She brought up a new display showing human fleet movements. Look at our attack patterns. We're not just defeating their ships. We're destroying their supply lines, capturing their intelligence networks, and eliminating their ability to coordinate resistance. You're not just winning battles, Counselor Ixthera realized with growing horror. You're dismantling their entire civilization's capacity for war. Exactly, Dr. Park confirmed. When this is over, the Draknari will still exist as a species. But they will never again be able to threaten anyone. Their children will grow up in a culture that builds things instead of destroying them. Ambassador Minho received another message from Admiral Cho. Sir, the Draknari are asking for one more thing. They want to know if humans will accept their unconditional surrender. The chamber was silent as everyone waited for Minho's response. This was the moment that would define humanity's place in galactic society. How they chose to end this war would determine how every other species viewed them for generations to come. Tell Admiral Cho that we will accept their surrender, Minho said carefully. But we have conditions of our own. What conditions? Elder Velthar asked. The Draknari military will be completely disbanded. Their weapons factories will be converted to build hospitals and schools. Their officers will be retrained as teachers and doctors. And most importantly, they will help us build a new kind of galactic defense force. What kind of defense force? Counselor Kelvis asked. Dr. Park smiled for the first time since the war began. The kind that makes sure no species ever again has to choose between being peaceful and being safe. The alien counselors looked at each other with a mixture of relief and concern. They were beginning to understand that humanity's victory over the Draknari was not just the end of one war. It was the beginning of a new era in galactic civilization, an era where the most peaceful species in the galaxy was also the most dangerous, and that, they realized, might be exactly what the galaxy needed. The Draknari Military Command surrendered at 1842 Galactic Standard Time, exactly 72 hours after their initial attack on New Sol. It was the fastest collapse of a major galactic power in recorded history. Admiral Cho Jinsu stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as the last Draknari battle group transmitted their surrender codes. Admiral, his communications officer Lieutenant Nam reported, we're receiving surrender transmissions from across their entire fleet. All military installations, all orbital platforms, all command centers. They're giving up everything. Cho nodded slowly. He felt no satisfaction in the victory, only a grim certainty that justice was being served. What are our total losses, Lieutenant? 0 ships destroyed, sir. 17 wounded crew members, all in stable condition. Total enemy casualties are also minimal. Most of their crews survived the engagements. The speed and completeness of the victory was stunning, but what disturbed the alien observers was not how quickly humanity had won. It was the methodical precision with which they had dismantled an entire civilization's war machine. Back on the council station, Elder Velthar called an emergency session to address what the galaxy had just witnessed. The chamber was fuller than usual, with representatives from dozens of species who had heard rumors about humanity's capabilities. The Draknari surrender has been confirmed, Velthar announced. Human forces have achieved complete victory in less than 4 standard days. We must now discuss what this means for galactic civilization. Ambassador Minho stood to address the assembly. Behind him, tactical displays showed the systematic occupation of Draknari space by human forces. Every military base, every weapons factory, every strategic position was now under human control. Honored counselors, Minho began. Humanity did not seek this war, but now that it has ended, we have responsibilities to fulfill. What responsibilities? Counselor Ixithara asked nervously. Dr. Park activated a holographic display showing human plans for Draknari territory. Complete demilitarization and cultural rehabilitation, she said matter-of-factly. The Draknari military will be permanently disbanded. Their weapons manufacturing capabilities will be converted to peaceful purposes. Their entire society will be restructured to prevent future aggression. The alien counselors stared at the plans with growing unease. These were not the terms of a peace treaty. This was the complete transformation of an entire civilization. You intend to change their entire culture? Elder Velthar asked. We intend to save it, Minho replied. The Draknari have been trapped in a cycle of violence for centuries. They measure success by conquest and honor by warfare. We're going to teach them better ways to find meaning in their lives. Captain Ominji's voice came through the communication system from Draknari space. Council Station, this is Captain O reporting from the former Draknari capital. We've begun implementing the cultural transition protocols. Explain these protocols. Captain, Counselor Kelvis requested. All military academies are being converted to schools for medicine, engineering, and agriculture. Former Draknari officers are enrolling in retraining programs to become teachers and doctors. Their weapons factories are now producing medical equipment and farming tools. The clinical efficiency of the transformation was breathtaking. In less than a week, humanity had not only defeated the Draknari military, but had begun reshaping their entire society. What if they resist these changes? Counselor Thexara asked. There was a pause before Captain O replied. Sir, resistance requires hope that things might return to the way they were. The Draknari no longer have that hope. Dr. Park brought up casualty reports on her display. In their last major war before meeting humans, the Draknari lost over 10 million soldiers in 6 months of fighting. In their war against humanity, they lost fewer than 50,000, and most of those were injured, not killed. Your point, Doctor? Elder Velthar inquired. They understand now that their way of war is obsolete. Humans don't just defeat enemies. We demonstrate that continued resistance is pointless. The Draknari leadership has seen what human warfare looks like. They know they can never win against us. Captain Kim Sung-ho reported from Hunter Squadron Delta. Council Station, we've completed our survey of Draknari military assets. All weapons stockpiles have been secured. All command structures have been dismantled. The transition to civilian governance is proceeding smoothly. Ambassador Minho received a private communication from Admiral Cho. The Admiral's face appeared on a small holographic display, visible only to the human delegation. Ambassador, we have a situation. Several other galactic powers have been monitoring our operations against the Draknari. The Hegemony High Command has requested a private meeting to discuss mutual defense arrangements. Minho understood immediately. Other species were now afraid of humanity's capabilities. They wanted to ensure they would never face the same fate as the Draknari. What are they offering, Admiral? Complete military cooperation, shared technology, and formal alliance agreements. They're essentially asking to be under human protection. Dr. Park had been listening to the exchange. It's not just the hegemony, she said quietly. I'm receiving similar requests from 6 other major powers. They all want the same thing, which is, they want to be on our side. The implications were staggering. In less than a week, humanity had gone from junior members of galactic society to the dominant military power. Other species were now seeking human protection rather than fearing human aggression. Elder Velthar's crystal form flickered with what might have been concern. Ambassador Minho, what are humanity's intentions regarding these requests for alliance? Minho considered the question carefully. This was the moment that would define humanity's role in galactic civilization for generations to come. Elder, humanity has one goal, he said finally. We want to ensure that what happened to New Sol never happens to anyone, anywhere in this galaxy. And how do you propose to achieve this? Dr. Park stepped forward. By creating a new kind of galactic defense force. Not an army of conquest, but a network of protection. Every peaceful species will be defended by others. Every aggressive species will be reformed like the Draknari. You're proposing to police the entire galaxy? Counselor Ixathara asked with alarm. We're proposing to protect it, Minho corrected. There's a difference. Captain O's voice came through the communication system again. Council Station. I have an update from the Draknari civilian leadership. They're requesting permission to send a delegation to apologize formally for the attack on New Sol. Apologize? Elder Velthar seemed surprised. Sir, they want to take responsibility for their actions and ask how they can make amends. Their new civilian government is composed entirely of former scientists, doctors, and teachers. They've rejected their old military leadership completely. The transformation was complete. The warrior culture that had threatened galactic peace for centuries had been replaced by a society focused on healing and building rather than fighting and destroying. Dr. Park looked at the tactical displays, showing human forces throughout Draknari space. The occupation will continue for at least a generation, she announced. We need to ensure the cultural changes take root properly. A generation? Counselor Kelvis sounded shocked. Major cultural transformation takes time, Dr. Park explained. We need to make sure their children grow up valuing peace over war, creation over destruction. This isn't something that happens overnight. Ambassador Minho received another communication from Earth. President Kang Min-soo's face appeared on the holographic display. Ambassador, the Earth Council has approved the Galactic Peace Initiative. We're prepared to extend protection to any species that requests it, with the understanding that protected worlds will contribute to the common defense. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was offering to protect the entire galaxy, but they were also making it clear that everyone would contribute to maintaining peace. What kind of contributions? Elder Velthar asked. Scientific research, medical knowledge, technological development, cultural exchange, President Kang replied. Every species has something valuable to offer. We want to build a civilization where everyone benefits from cooperation. Dr. Park added, the Draknari will contribute too once their rehabilitation is complete. Their knowledge of metallurgy and engineering will be valuable for building peaceful infrastructure. The session continued for hours as the alien counselors tried to understand the new reality. Humanity had demonstrated overwhelming military superiority, but they were using that power to build rather than conquer. They had defeated an aggressive empire, but they were working to transform it into a peaceful society. As the day ended and the council session adjourned, the alien representatives filed out of the chamber with heavy thoughts. They had witnessed the birth of a new galactic order, one where the most peaceful species was also the most powerful. The question that remained was whether this new order would bring the lasting peace that humanity promised, or whether it would simply create new forms of control and domination. Only time would tell if humanity could be trusted with the power they had claimed. 3 months after the Draknari incident, as historians would later call it, the Galactic Council reconvened to formally address humanity's membership application. The Great Chamber felt different now. Where once alien representatives had viewed humans as useful mediators and valuable allies, now there was a careful respect mixed with wariness. The changes were subtle but unmistakable. Security protocols had been quietly upgraded. Council guards wore newer, more advanced armor. Several species had requested permission to station warships near the council station, not for protection from humans, but for protection by humans. Elder Velthar called the session to order. The ancient crystal being's form pulsing with steady, measured light. We gather today to vote on humanity's application for full council membership. However, recent events have given this decision new significance. Ambassador Minho stood at the speaker's platform, but he was no longer the junior diplomat seeking acceptance. The man who addressed the council now carried the quiet authority of someone whose species had proven they could reshape galactic civilization in a matter of days. Honored Elder, respected counselors, Minho began, 3 months ago, humanity requested to join this council as equals. Today we come before you not as supplicants but as protectors. A ripple of mixed sounds moved through the chamber. Some species clicked approval, others hummed uncertainly. The balance of power had shifted so dramatically that even the formal language of diplomacy had changed. Counselor Ixathara was the first to speak. Ambassador Minho, the Council has voted unanimously to approve humanity's full membership. However, we must address the concerns that recent events have raised about your species' methods. What concerns? Dr. Park asked from her position beside Minho. You presented yourselves as peaceful for 30 years, Counselor Kelva said carefully. Yet when threatened, you demonstrated military capabilities that no other species possesses. Some council members feel this was deceptive. Minho nodded thoughtfully. Counselor, we understand this concern. But consider this. For 30 years we were peaceful. Every negotiation, every mediation, every act of cooperation was genuine. We didn't hide our nature. We simply had no reason to reveal all of it. Dr. Park activated a holographic display showing current conditions in former Draknari space. The Draknari homeworld is now more prosperous than it has been in centuries. Their population is healthier, their cities are cleaner, and their crime rates have dropped to historic lows. The images showed Draknari children attending schools built in former weapons factories, former soldiers working as doctors and teachers, military bases converted into research centers and hospitals. You see, Dr. Park continued, our killer instinct, as some have called it, isn't about killing. It's about permanently solving problems. The Draknari are not our prisoners. They're our patients recovering from a cultural sickness that made them aggressive. Captain Ominji joined the session via holographic transmission from the Draknari capital. She had been promoted to admiral and was now overseeing the long-term transition process. Counselors, she said, I want to share something with you. Yesterday, a group of former Draknari officers came to me with a request. They want to join human peacekeeping forces as medical personnel. Elder Velthar's form brightened with surprise. They want to serve under human command. They want to serve the cause of peace, Admiral O corrected. They've seen what their old way of life accomplished, and they've seen what our way can build. They're choosing to be part of the solution. Counselor Thexara leaned forward, his warrior's instincts engaged. Admiral, what about resistance movements? Surely some Draknari reject these changes. There were some initially, O admitted. But resistance requires hope that the old ways might return. When people see their children growing up healthier and happier than previous generations, when they see their scientists making breakthroughs instead of weapons, resistance becomes hard to justify. Ambassador Minho received a priority communication from Earth. President Kang's face appeared on a private display visible only to the human delegation. Ambassador, I have news that the Council should hear. 7 more species have formally requested inclusion in the Galactic Peace Initiative. They want human protection in exchange for contributing to galactic stability. Minho looked at the assembled alien counselors. Honored members, Earth has asked me to inform you that the Galactic Peace Initiative now includes 23 species. We've gone from protecting 17 human worlds to safeguarding over 400 planets. The chamber buzzed with surprised conversations. The scope of human influence had expanded far beyond what anyone had imagined possible. How do you manage such extensive responsibilities? Elder Velthar asked. Dr. Park smiled. The same way we managed to defeat the Draknari so quickly. We don't do it alone. Every protected species contributes according to their abilities. The Corvin provide mineral resources for building defense stations. The Altari share their advanced sensor technology. The Nexus Collective offers their expertise in energy systems. And what do humans contribute? Counselor Ixathara asked. The willingness to fight when fighting becomes necessary. Minho replied simply. And the knowledge of how to end conflicts permanently. Captain Kim Seung-ho's voice came through the communication system from his patrol route. Council Station, this is Hunter Leader Seung-ho reporting from the Outer Rim. We've encountered a pirate fleet attacking refugee ships from the Corvin system. What is your response, Captain? Elder Velthar asked. Standard protocol, Elder. We've offered the pirates one chance to surrender and face trial for their crimes. If they refuse, we'll disable their ships and take them prisoner. The refugees will be escorted safely to their destination. And if the pirates choose to fight? There was a pause before Seung-ho replied, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. Then they'll discover why piracy has become an extinct profession in human-protected space. The transmission ended, leaving the Council to contemplate the new reality. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. Instead, they had made themselves indispensable to its protection. Dr. Park brought up new data on her display. Crime rates in human-protected space have dropped by 97% in the past 3 months. Trade volume has increased by 400%. Scientific cooperation between species has reached levels never before recorded. You're saying that fear of human retaliation has made the galaxy more peaceful? Counselor Kelvis asked. No, Dr. Park corrected. We're saying that the knowledge that aggression will be met with overwhelming force has made cooperation more attractive than conflict. Admiral Cho joined the session from his flagship. Counselors, I want to address the question of human intentions directly. Some of you are concerned that we're building an empire. Elder Velthar's crystal form flickered. Are you not? We're building something new, Cho replied. An empire conquers and takes. We protect and give. Every species under human protection keeps their government, their culture, their independence. We only intervene when someone threatens innocent lives. Ambassador Minho stepped forward. Elder Velthar, you asked earlier about our true intentions. Let me be completely clear. Humanity wants one thing: a galaxy where children can grow up safe, where families don't have to fear violence, where different species can work together without suspicion. And how long will this protection last? Counselor Ixathera asked. Dr. Park looked at the tactical displays showing human ships throughout the galaxy. As long as it's needed. We're not occupying these worlds. We're watching over them. When threats arise, we respond. When peace is secure, we step back. But you never leave completely, Elder Velthar observed. Would you want us to? Minho asked in return. The question hung in the air for a long moment. Finally, Counselor Thexera spoke up. 3 months ago, my species lived in constant fear of Draknari raids. Our border worlds were heavily militarized, our resources devoted to defense. Now our children play in parks where weapon emplacements used to stand. Other counselors began to speak up with similar stories. Trade routes that had been dangerous for decades were now safe. Conflicts that had simmered for generations had been peacefully resolved. Scientific projects that required cooperation between suspicious species were now routine. Elder Velthar's form pulsed with what might have been acceptance. It seems that humanity has given the galaxy something it has never possessed: the certainty of protection. More than that, Dr. Park added, we've given you something else: the knowledge that peaceful people never have to choose between being safe and being good. As the session ended and the alien counselors filed out of the chamber, they carried with them a new understanding. They had not just gained powerful allies. They had gained something far more valuable: absolute protectors who would never abandon them. Dr. Park stood at the observation deck, watching human ships patrol the space around the council station. Those ships were no longer symbols of conquest or domination. They were symbols of a promise that innocent beings throughout the galaxy could sleep safely, knowing that someone was watching over them, someone who had the strength to protect them and the wisdom to know when protection was needed. Humanity had finally found its place in galactic civilization, not as conquerors or rulers, but as guardians. And the galaxy, for the first time in its recorded history, was truly at peace. The age of humanity had begun, and it would be remembered not for the wars they fought, but for the peace they built.